Soup, 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 soup. Soup, 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 soup. Soup, 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 soup.
Steamy, scrumptious soup is what is needed this autumnal season. I sure hope the winter weather won't be 40 below this year. Brrr! I'm sure if it does, this will warm us up, despite the cold, snowy weather represented here with a photo my mum took in our yard after a blizzard. This photo was printed in the local credit union's calendar. This recipe apparently has Aboriginal roots and originates from my home province of Saskatchewan. I question that, however, as I had never heard of it before this assignment. Perhaps it's because I'm not of First Nations descent. If anybody has insight into Three Sisters soup and its origins, or a version that they'd like to share in the comments section under this video, you should feel free to do so. For the sake of conserving time, I won't read the handout about this soup. However, if you would like to read the legend behind the origins of this soup, you may pause and read this selection that was provided to me by my Food Studies 30 teacher. If you would like to embark on a food adventure and make this soup for yourself, I am including the recipe which can be paused and screenshotted for your convenience. This soup requires 2 cups, approximately 12 ounces, of canned white or yellow corn drained. 2 cups, that's about a 14-ounce can, of green beans drained. 2 cups peeled and cubed butternut or acorn squash. 1½ cups of diced peeled potatoes. 5 cups water. 2 chicken bouillon cubes. 2 tablespoons butter melted, 2 tablespoons all-purpose flour, and last but not least, 1/4 teaspoon pepper. It is important to prevent food-borne illness, so I put on a clean apron and a hairnet to prevent my luscious locks from getting in our soup. I also made sure to thoroughly wash my hands. Here is a phrase to live by.
Remember, don't spread germs.
Now that my hands are squeaky clean, we get to the fun part, the actual preparation. I took the squash and washed it. I then chopped it into a smaller hunk as it was too big for our purposes. There was a side with seeds that we deseeded and baked as a vegetable. I hadn't had this type of squash before, so I ate some of it in boiled form. I found it yummy, but I added a bit of salt and pepper to it, as it was a tad bland on its own. It isn't really meant to be eaten this way. You normally would have it paired with something else. I peeled the squash and proceeded to chop it into cubes. After chopping for a while, I put some of the squash in a measuring container. Once I had it measured out, I put it all in a bowl. I proceeded to wash the potatoes. I also peeled a couple of potatoes. I cubed them and measured out these. Lastly, I put these in the bowl with the squash. I opened the tin of corn. I then went and took the tin opener and opened the tin of green beans. I put the contents from both of these tins into a colander to be drained. I didn't have access to bouillon cubes, so instead I used powder. The recipe calls for 2 cubes, so I followed the directions on the side of the container which stated a ratio of a teaspoon of powder for every cup of water. So I used 2 cups of boiling water and 2 teaspoons of powder. I stirred the powder in. Here you can see the flakes of OXO-branded powder floating around in the water. I put this mixture in a pot. I added 3 additional cups of water to this pot. The next step was moving the corn and beans from the colander and putting them in the pot. Then the squash and potatoes were added. This mixture was brought to a boil. Then the heat was reduced to a medium temperature to simmer for 10 minutes so that the potatoes and squash would be soft. I took a square of margarine that was about half a cup's worth and cut it in half to make 1/4 of a cup. which according to the internet was about 2 tablespoons worth. The butter was put into a pot to melt. Once melted, we mixed this into 2 tablespoons all-purpose flour. This paste, as the recipe calls it, was put in the pot and cooked for an additional 5 minutes. I stirred 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper in the pot, and the meal was complete. Here is my sister holding a bowl of Three Sisters soup. Here comes the fun part. Washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen up, putting things away, etc. Here at our secret filming location, we have access to a commercial sanitizer. To use this contraption, first you open the machine, then you put a tray of washed dishes in. Then the door gets closed and you wait for the sanitation process to finish. Once the sanitizer had done its thing, I used a tea towel to wipe off the excess water. Here is the cupboard where the colander is usually stored. Here you can see the empty space. That's better. I'd put everything else used back in its respective place as well, but I doubt you really want to see footage of me putting all the utensils, pots, etc. away. I put my apron and the tea towels in the washing machine. Cleaning the kitchen includes disposal of refuse like potato and squash peelings in the dustbin. The tin cans, however, are put into this big single-stream waste bin where they will be collected for recycling via our municipal recycling program. Phew! What a lot of effort! I'm famished. What can I find to eat? I know! I think I shall have a big bowl of some Three Sisters soup when I get home.
Sometimes we're real close friends. We stay up late and talk at night.
Other times we don't get along. There are even times we fight.
But I know she's always there,
And I know she'll always care.
she's my sister.
I love my sister.
Wait just a second. How many sisters do I have? Mom! I need to go to the eye doctor. I'm seeing things in triplicate.